Thank you, Dr. Gintinat. And I have to say I'm really happy I never have to learn how to pronounce your last name. Everybody just calls you Dr. Gintinat. So thank you so much. A real privilege to be here. I also extend condolences and on the part of all of my University of North Carolina colleagues who have worked with many of you in the audience on the passing of your late king. This is going to be actually a kind of simple talk. I would say in contrast to some of the ones I've just been sitting through. And it answers two basic questions. And at the very outset, I want to say, we have a 4-year grant. We're not even finished with the first year. So these are very preliminary data. So answers two questions. Why do people join or decline to join HIV cure research? And are they satisfied with their decision? Oh, that's good. Okay. So just a little preface, and that is studying decision-making in early phase clinical trials is a common occupation. It's kind of a cottage industry among social scientists who are interested in bioethics. And usually it is investigating people who join early phase trials because investigators and IRBs are worried that they really understand what they're getting into. There's certainly a lot of work concerned about with understanding of healthy volunteers, but even more common are trials that involve cancer patients that have exhausted all forms of treatment. And those are participants in studies who really may be hoping a lot for a benefit when there really is very little chance of one. So, there must be a better way to do this. So what's different about the HIV cure trials context, and I think a lot of you now are very familiar with this. One is that the participants are not healthy volunteers, nor are they patients without treatment options. In fact, they're HIV-positive individuals doing very well on ART, and in this case, diagnosed, as you all know, I'm going to be talking about people from the SEARCH trial, but diagnosed at the acute phase. What's unique here, though, besides the fact that they're healthy, relatively healthy, is that they are being asked to depart from standard of care. And some bioethicists have, in the literature, argued that this is a bad deal. And as Gintinat noted, or Dr. Gintinat noted, that this has been a concern for people, and it's one of the motivations for her to be so welcoming of us in our study. These bioethicists have argued that participation is indeed irrational when you consider the risks and benefits. So that the question remains, why do people do it? And making sense of such decisions to participate in early phase HIV cure trials really requires empirical data that to date do not exist, that should explore how people in actual ongoing HIV cure trials come to their decisions and why they do that. And don't worry, I'm not going to rest on this slide, only because I'm not going to, but also because I stand between you and lunch. But what I want to point out is that we do have an R01, it's from NIAID in the US, big team of collaborators. And we started with the SEARCH cohort, and if you look on the far left-hand side, we did a baseline survey of about 250 SEARCH cohort research members. And then our design, I'm just going to be looking a little bit toward the middle then, is that among SEARCH cohort members who are invited to join a trial, we ask them to be interviewed if they join or if they decline. And then we interview them over time. And there's 3 interviews on average for participants and 2 for decliners, and they cover a lot of the same material. Each is asked to fill out a quantitative scale about how satisfied they are with their decision or how much conflict they feel. They're asked about their experiences in the SEARCH cohort and what influenced their decisions. What did they perceive as the risks and benefits? And over time, we follow them. First, we we interview them within 5 days of consent or 5 days of declining the invitation. And then in the interim, 4 weeks post-structured treatment interruption, or if they've already had a viral rebound, as soon after that as we can. And then both decliners and participants are interviewed at the end of the trial. So again, these participants in our study are nested within the search research cohort. You've heard a lot about search, but the ones that we've been interviewing are either in a trial that involved only treatment interruption or a trial that involved some kind of intervention. And again, you've heard about a lot of those today, an intervention with a placebo followed by treatment interruption. And our interviews are right now, we have participants and decliners in both kinds of trials. So first question that I'm going to be addressing is really, why did they join or decline? One thing I want to point out that we've really noticed and we feel makes this a rather special kind of study is that being part of the search cohort itself really creates a transformed identity. Of course, we don't have data on what they felt like before. We only have their description of what being in search made them feel now, and that is essentially special. They know search is a research study as well as a site where they get care, and they're special because of their acute HIV status on diagnosis. One said, I'm a special representative of the group. A number of people are antibody negative when they're enrolled in search, and that makes them feel almost normal. That's a very important issue in Thailand in particular, and it's been commented on already in our meeting. And I'm going to try and get to all the quotes from people, but they really saw that being part of search made them, and taking drugs maybe the longest, made them specially appropriate for cure trials. So that translates into research motivations, which you want to be careful about, right? And so we'll see what they had to say. First of all, why did they join? A lot anticipated that being off ART would be a clear benefit to them. And this is a kind of long quote. It was actually from a second interview. So this person was about to restart ART, but the material in here is very reflective of what people said just as they joined. Stopping ART is the benefit for me. I can live and not worry that I have to take medication. And again, heard that over and over again. And now I know that my limit, I can suppress the virus about a particular number of weeks. Stopping the drug makes me feel that my life is better, but my body's not okay with it. And that kind of acceptance of viral rebound we saw in many interviews. So there's psychological and social benefits to being off ART. A number of our respondents said they really wanted to challenge themselves, that they wanted to learn about their ability to suppress in a controlled, highly monitored environment. They really were hopeful that they could stay off ART, but they understood that there was uncertainty. One quote, "They did not guarantee I would be cured. It's a hope for me to choose. It's one of my choices." They talked a lot about benefit to others as well and benefit to science. Again, part of the specialness of being in search is that they feel they're part of the research team. They're chosen because they have special bodies and they're going to be good for making new knowledge. One said, this research is done for the future, for other people. I wanted to give the good things to society. If people don't volunteer, there will be no progress. And this was a common sentiment. So I want to say that a number of people said they were guinea pigs, they felt like guinea pigs, but that was not usually, or in fact almost never said with a negative connotation. They referred to themselves as rare items that are up for the experiment. So here the guinea pig is useful. We do not do it for ourselves. There's a reciprocity that I don't think is absent in the West, but which is very clear here, with people giving back, paying forward. One wanted to give back specifically to the research that Search does, and others, I think the benefits that the trial will get are not different from what I'll get. It's a win-win. If they win, I win, or not. And another, I'm responsible for being a sample of the experiment. I get benefits, the research staff does too. And I put these quotes in here. I want to emphasize we are really at a preliminary analysis stage in our work, and I also think letting the participants speak for themselves is the best thing that I can do at this stage of our research. A number of people who joined also did anticipate benefits, but, and this is very important, within the safe monitoring by the staff, they really did feel protected. One said every risk has a plan to support it, and the risks are well known to this audience. We've already talked about them. They also knew that optional procedures were involved, and these could be quite significant: leukapheresis, lumbar puncture, MRI, etc., tissue biopsy, and they were burdensome, but they were optional. So many people did them to help the science, but they also chose sometimes not to. So one big question here is about, did we find that they're informed and it was a voluntary choice? At this very early stage, we would say yes, that they appear to be well informed, don't feel undue pressure. One said, if the study is successful for me, I will not take the drug for my entire life. Boy, that's a big hope among these participants, but I don't expect it really. They told me not to, and I know that I can't get rid of the virus from my body completely. Another said, I walked in here by myself, I made the decision by myself, they didn't force me, I can withdraw whenever I want. Okay, then I'm moving a little more quickly. One wonderful thing, and that I've sort of neglected as I'm in the weeds of reading these interviews, is that a lot of people decline. I mean, we're not saying a lot, these are small trials, but a number of people declined. Why did they decline? Burden of time and travel. They were worried about the risks of physical harm. You'll note that these are the same risks that were listed by people who participated. It's an important conclusion for us is they value these things differently. The risk-benefit ratio for them came out with a different conclusion. They were worried about being randomized to placebo. They were really worried about uncertainty, like no one can confirm that stopping ART is okay, so I'm not doing it. They also were holding out for other studies, like maybe there's this study, but the search docs would say, well, another one's coming down the road. Okay, very quickly, are they satisfied with their decision? We measured decision satisfaction over time, and we assessed it with a validated measure that includes self-report of these items, how informed they felt, was it consistent with their values, was it sufficiently supported and not pressured, did it reflect certainty about their choice and resulted in satisfaction. And in this scale, 100 is, man, that's the worst decision I ever made in my life, and 0 is, I've never made such a good decision, okay? So our findings were that people are relatively satisfied with their decision. In fact, on that scale of 0 to 100, our average was maybe around 25. And some more conflicted, others less. But interestingly, and I think we're going to look carefully at our data as we get more interviews over time, but this didn't change. So even though people might have been hopeful about joining, and really optimistic maybe about the results of being a CURE trial participant, it didn't, their hopes were not dashed, and they did not regret their decision. In fact, we can think of one person who regretted a decision in all of our interviews. And I think that's really important and a great value that Dr. Jintanat has allowed us to do our study in this context. It's a great value to look over time at people's perceptions of benefit. I'm not going to go over these because I know I'm out of time, and I think there's red things flashing. So should I stop? Just a little bit? Can I go a little more? Yeah, okay. So we looked at participants only, decliners only. We looked at participants by trial and decliner, and by trial participants and decliners. Basically, we found very similar results. In fact, we found that decliners were somewhat less satisfied. They seemed less satisfied than the joiners, and that includes over time. And that we have some qualitative data that explain it, but essentially it's like some people really wanted to join these trials and couldn't because of the time burden or the travel burden. Others felt they should, because a good person would, but they just couldn't bring themselves to because they were too worried about stopping ART. Okay, just a summary of our preliminary findings then. Participants perceived that going off ART in a controlled, safe way is a benefit and a valued personal contribution to science. Their special acute status was really an important factor. Decliners were worried about protocol burden, randomization, and uncertainty of risks of treatment interruption. And the majority of both participants and decliners were satisfied with their decision at the time of consent and the end of the trial. These are not necessarily things we expected to find, and we're certainly going to be pursuing them across a lot more trials. I want to say one more thing about participants didn't think it was a bad deal to join. Reciprocity I've already talked about. I've talked about the fact that participants and decliners described very similar risks and benefits. They just weighed them, valued them differently. And I've seen that in other results of work I've done in different kinds of trials. And also they looked across, like, hey, another trial is coming down the road, maybe I'll just hold off. Okay, I think because of time, I just want to put my acknowledgments up, as everybody has done, and especially thank the study volunteers, and especially thank our wonderful interviewer, who's not part of the search group, Thidarat Jupimai, and others who have been so helpful in our getting the study done. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Gail.